I still remember the way she said it. Not with anger, not with rage, but with that tired, smug tone I'd grown to expect from her. "You're just not cut out for this job," she said, sipping her oat milk latte, as if those words didn't slice clean through me. I didn't say anything, not immediately. I stood there, holding the report she hadn't even bothered to read, the one I'd spent 2 weekends perfecting. The same one she'd probably claim credit for in this afternoon's executive meeting. She leaned back in her ergonomic chair, her eyes barely lifting from her screen. "Honestly," she added, "I think it's time you moved on." There was no warning, no meeting invite, no HR rep in the room, just me, her, and the quiet hum of the office AC. That was it. After 5 years, after building entire systems from scratch, after staying late when everyone left early, after fixing her messes behind closed doors. She dismissed me like a minor inconvenience. I could have screamed. I could have begged. But instead, I smiled, and I said, "All right, I'll leave on Friday." She raised an eyebrow. That was probably the last reaction she was expecting. But then I added something that made her pause just slightly. "But Monday will be interesting." Her expression twitched. Barely, but enough for me to notice. She rolled her eyes and muttered, "Whatever." She thought I was bluffing. She always thought I was bluffing. The walk back to my desk felt surreal. It was like I was floating above the moment, watching my own life fall apart, and somehow not feeling fear. I could hear my coworkers chatting, laughing a few rows away. They didn't know. No one knew, except me. I quietly opened my drawer and pulled out the small notebook I always kept hidden underneath a stack of outdated client folders. On the cover, a sticker read, "They'll regret underestimating you." It had been a gift from my younger sister during my first week at the company. Back when I believed in hard work, in loyalty, in being the yes woman. I opened the first page. Dates, notes, incidents. Times she had publicly corrected me in front of clients. Emails she had forwarded to herself, removing my name. The campaign strategy I built that got her promoted last year, all of it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. As I closed the notebook, I looked around the office. Every desk I passed had something I'd helped design, troubleshoot, or fix. Every successful project she was praised for, I had touched. And now, she wanted me out? Just like that? No, not this time. I slid my laptop bag over my shoulder and headed toward the elevator. Not to HR, not to the parking lot, but to the legal department. If she thought she could erase 5 years of my life without consequences. Well, Monday was going to be interesting. They say time heals everything. But when you're being erased little by little every single day, time doesn't heal. It humiliates. When I first joined the company, I was 25, nervous, hopeful, desperate, to prove I belonged, and she, Rachel, my manager, she seemed different. She smiled during my interview, told me she saw potential. She even complimented the small portfolio I had brought in, said my style was refreshing. I remember walking out of that office thinking, maybe this is where it begins for me. In a way, it did, but not in the way I imagined. My first big break came during a company rebranding project. Everyone else had pitched the obvious, safe designs, outdated slogans, overused color schemes. I stayed up 3 nights sketching out a new concept, bold, clean, memorable. Rachel loved it. "This is what we've been waiting for," she said, holding up the printouts like they were gold. She presented it the next morning to the board. Everyone clapped. And in that moment, I felt proud. Until I realized something. She never said my name. Not once. I remember standing at the back of the conference room hearing her say, It just came to me last night. I was thinking about how we needed to stand out. I froze. Everyone nodded, in admiration. I laughed quietly to myself, thinking, it's okay. It's just one time. It wasn't. Over the next few years, it became a pattern. The pitch I wrote, she reworded it and presented it as hers. The client I brought in through my personal contact, she said they found us through her network. The design sprint I led when she was on vacation, she said she briefed me beforehand. Every success somehow had her name attached, and mine removed. I used to keep quiet because I thought it would pass, that eventually someone would notice. But that's the thing about corporate spaces. No one notices the quiet ones. They only remember who talks louder in meetings. And Rachel? She was loud, polished, articulate. The kind of person who could say the sky is green and make people believe it. There was one moment that broke me more than the rest. It was during the global campaign launch for our biggest client, a project I had practically breathed into existence for 6 straight months. She had been out sick half the time, and I had led the entire strategy, research, rollout, creative, direction, everything. On launch day, she got up on stage in front of 300 people, including our CEO, and said, "This project was a labor of love. I pushed the team to rethink everything, and I think we got it right." And then she smiled at me in the front row. That kind of smile that says, "Try me." I didn't clap, but everyone else did. That night I cried in my car for 45 minutes before I could drive home, not because I was weak, not because I wanted praise, but because I felt erased, like my voice didn't exist, like my ideas only mattered once she stole them. I started documenting everything after that. Every shared doc, every email draft, every meeting minute I prepared, every design folder time-stamped with my version history. At first it felt petty, but over time it felt powerful. Because if I didn't protect my work, no one else would. There were moments where I almost left, like the time she forgot to include my name on the team newsletter that featured top performers. Or the time she told a new intern right in front of me, "We don't always hire the best. Sometimes we hire potential." I was standing 3 feet away, but I stayed, because some part of me still wanted to believe that hard work would win, that people would eventually see. What I didn't realize is that she had built her career on people like me, the silent ones, the people who work harder behind the scenes, the people who never raise their hand when credit is being passed around. And the worst part? I taught her how to steal from me by staying silent. But not anymore. The moment she looked at me last Friday and said, "You're just not cut out for this job," something changed. She may have fired me, but she also set me free. Because now I had everything I needed. Monday was coming, and for the first time in years, I wasn't scared. I was ready. I spent the weekend in silence. No calls, no messages, no tears. Just quiet. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not even my best friend. Not even my sister. Because I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for control. Friday afternoon, I packed my things with a polite smile. Rachel didn't even come to say goodbye. She sent a Slack message, "Wishing you the best in your next chapter." The emoji made me laugh. She had no idea what chapter was about to be written. By Saturday morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table, laptop open, notebooks sprawled out, folders arranged by color and category. Emails, presentation NAS, decks, client feedback threads, internal project logs, all documented, dated, time-stamped, and, most importantly, tied to me. I had never looked at it all in one place before. It was like watching the truth materialize in front of me. I started with the rebranding project from last year, The one she presented at the investor meeting. The one that got her the Innovator of the Quarter award. In her pitch deck, she claimed the concept came from a late-night brainstorm session. I still had the voice note I sent myself that morning while brushing my teeth. Idea: rotate brand message around trust through design. Make it the anchor theme. Time stamped. 1 week before she ever mentioned it. I opened my company, email archive. Searched for every thread with Rachel's name attached to my work. She had a pattern. She would ask for my help casually, copy my work, forward it to executives with slight rewording. The final piece would always look like hers, but the skeleton was mine, not anymore. I created a folder, RE Proof. Inside it, screenshots of Slack threads, Google Docs, edit history, audio recordings. Our calls were always for training purposes. Even a Zoom clip where I pitched the idea, and she later reused it, word for word, in her board meeting. I wasn't angry. I wasn't anxious. I was methodical, because power doesn't always look like shouting in a boardroom. Sometimes power looks like a woman in her pajamas, building a case so airtight it can't be ignored. By Sunday night, I had 3 separate packages: internal presentation, a detailed PDF timeline of stolen work, misrepresented contributions, and 1 line at the top. I stayed silent out of loyalty. But silence isn't consent. Private email to the board, professional tone, calm language, and all attachments included, a backup email draft addressed to HR, legal, and a few quietly trusted colleagues, scheduled for automatic send at 9:17 a.m. Monday. Why 9:17? Because Rachel always started her weekly Monday Wins email at 9:15. I wanted to make sure she'd read mine right in the middle of hers. And then I got a little poetic. I scheduled my exit email, the one that would go to the entire department, for 9:31 a.m. Just 2 lines. Every win has a story. Sometimes the real author goes unread, but not today. Attached was a single document. Attribution log, 5 years of silence. I slept better Sunday night than I had in months. Monday came with birdsong and calm skies. I wore black. Not for mourning, for arrival. I walked into the building like a guest. Technically, I wasn't even employed anymore. But I still had my badge. No one had disabled it yet. Typical Rachel. The receptionist smiled at me nervously. I nodded, took the elevator, and walked into the glass conference room like I belonged. Because I did. The board was already seated. Rachel stood at the head of the table. She was wearing her signature navy blue. The power color, she once called it. The projector was warming up. Her deck was titled 2024 Expansion Roadmap, presented by Rachel Thomas. I sat quietly in the corner. Didn't make a sound. At 9:17, she glanced at her watch. And then, her phone buzzed. She blinked, then buzzed again, and again. Her face dropped by 9:19. By 9:22, the CTO was scrolling through a PDF on his tablet. The CEO's brow furrowed. The head of HR looked pale. At 9:31, one more email came through. Rachel froze. Every win has a story. The CEO turned to me and asked, "Would you like to take a seat?" I smiled. Rachel didn't say a word. Not yet. For the first few minutes, she kept pretending nothing was happening. Rachel flipped through the opening slides of her presentation, with that same rehearsed confidence she always wore like lipstick. "Let's begin with our Q1 projections," she said, clearing her throat. But no one was listening. Everyone in the room had their phones out, tablets open, eyes scanning, eyebrows rising. One of the board members, Mr. Chen, the head of finance, adjusted his glasses 3 times in 1 minute. He wasn't hearing her words. He was reading mine. The silence in that glass room was louder than any shouting match. Rachel noticed it too. Her voice started cracking, just a little. I've built this roadmap around our internal innovation," she stammered. "And the leadership we've developed over the last few years." I almost felt bad for her. Almost. She hadn't looked at me once, but I could feel her pulse from across the table. Then came the question. "Rachel," the CEO interrupted, "can you walk us through this brand philosophy section? The one about trust through design?" Rachel blinked. She smiled nervously. "Of course," she said. "It's an idea I've been developing since... Because," he said, holding up his iPad, "it seems this concept was first proposed a full week before your draft. By someone else." He turned the iPad toward the table. There was my voice note, time-stamped, transcribed, my voice, idea, rotate brand message around trust through design. Rachel's jaw tensed. She looked like someone trying to escape a locked room with just their expression. Before she could speak, the CTO leaned in. "I also want to ask about the Westbridge client strategy, because the forwarded email chain shows edits made by you after it was finalized by..." He looked down at the PDF, then up again. "Her. And this time, finally." She looked at me. That moment will live rent-free in my mind forever. She looked at me like I had betrayed her, as if I had snatched something that belonged to her, as if I had broken some unspoken rule, that quiet people should stay quiet. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The board was speaking for me now. One by one, they started quoting from my document, the attribution log, line by line. Product pitch, July 2022. Initial strategy, authored by, redacted, edited and rebranded by Rachel. Client. Concept design, Jan 2023, created by redacted, sent to Rachel via internal Slack. No attribution. They weren't just reading. They were realizing. Rachel tried to fight back. "This is being misinterpreted," she said. "She was part of the team. I trusted her with input and she's..." "She?" the CEO asked. "You mean the employee you terminated 3 days ago without consulting HR?" Rachel blinked. I didn't fire her. I suggested a transition. She was underperforming." "According to your words," said Mr. Chen, reading from Slack, "you're just not cut out for this job." Rachel fell completely silent. Then came the mic drop. The head of HR tapped the table. "For what it's worth," she said, "we reviewed system logins this weekend. Everything in the proof file is legit, time-stamped, documented, archived." "Why didn't you bring this up sooner?" asked one of the advisors. "I was waiting for Monday," I said calmly. The CEO stared at me, then smiled, small, thoughtful. "You planned this?" he said. Not accusing, admiring. I nodded once. Rachel tried to laugh it off. "I mean, come on. This all feels dramatic. Who does a coordinated document drop?" "I do," I replied. "And I did it quietly, because I didn't need applause. Just accountability." Boom. That line hung in the air like a closing curtain. Then the final twist dropped. The board member next to the CEO leaned forward. "We actually want to speak with you privately," he said, turning to me. "We've been reconsidering the leadership structure in your department." Rachel's eyes widened. "What?" "She built the work," the CTO said simply. "We just didn't know it until today." Rachel reached for her water bottle. Her hands were trembling. "Are you replacing me?" "No," the CEO replied. "We're correcting the org chart." By the end of the meeting, Rachel was asked to step outside. I didn't smirk. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, watching a door close that had once shut me out, and now it was hers. When I finally left the room, the hallway felt different. Not louder, not busier, just clearer. My steps didn't echo. They landed. For the first time, I wasn't dragging 5 years of buried frustration behind me. I was walking forward, with a name they could no longer ignore. Mine. Rachel didn't return to her desk that day. In fact, she never came back to the office at all. By the time her resignation was announced 2 days later, no one was surprised. They phrased it politely. Stepping away to explore new opportunities. But everyone knew, and no one asked questions. Not out loud, anyway. She didn't message me, didn't call, didn't apologize, but I wasn't waiting for one. Some apologies arrive too late to mean anything, and some betrayals speak so loudly that silence becomes the only honest answer. That same week, I received an email. Subject line: New title confirmation, department. Lead, no interview, no formality, no ceremony. Just a quiet correction of something that had been wrong for a long, long time. I didn't throw a party, didn't post about it online, didn't even tell my parents right away, because the promotion didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a return of what had always been mine. I moved into Rachel's old office the following Monday. Same desk. Same chair, same window view, but it didn't feel like hers anymore. I changed the lights, brought in a plant, hung one framed quote on the wall. Quiet doesn't mean weak, it means you were too focused building empires to shout. People started treating me differently. They stopped interrupting me in meetings, started forwarding credit instead of stealing it. Even the intern, the one who once joked I was too nice, stood up straighter when I walked past. But that wasn't the real win. The real win was walking into a room and not having to prove I belonged. I just did. A week later, I was heading out late after a strategy session when I passed one of the senior board members in the elevator. He gave me a small nod. I read every line, he said. I looked at him, curious. The attribution document, he continued. It wasn't just evidence, it was a story. He paused, then smiled, and it was written by the right person this time. I didn't say much in return, just smiled, quietly. Because poetic justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like being seen. I wish I could tell you Rachel learned from what happened, that she found her voice in a healthier way, that she owned up to the damage she caused. But not every story ends with redemption. Some just end. And that's okay too. What matters is this. I didn't need to destroy her to rebuild myself. I didn't need to yell. Didn't need to drag her down. I just needed to stop hiding the truth. And when I did, the truth did the rest. Now, when new hires walk into my office, nervous and unsure, I remember the girl I used to be. I remind them that credit matters, that it's okay to speak up. That being kind doesn't mean staying silent, and sometimes before they leave, I hand them a small notebook. On the front, a sticker reads, "They'll regret underestimating you, just like my sister gave me, just like I once needed. I don't know where Rachel is now, but wherever she is, I hope she knows that by the time she realized what was going on, it was far too late." What did this story make you think? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.